In El Salvador lies the largest prison in the world, built to hold up to 4,000 inmates. It's not just a prison, it's a fortress designed with the highest security measures. The prisoners inside live under relentless surveillance, their every move monitored both inside and out. Over 100 inmates are crammed into a single cell, stripped of privacy, fresh air, and even visits from loved ones. This prison, known as the Center for the Confinement of Terrorism, CECOT, opened in 2023. It was the result of El Salvador's decades-long battle with terrorizing street gangs, or Americe, which had turned the small nation into one of the most dangerous places on earth. At its peak, El Salvador suffered over 100 murders per 100,000 inhabitants, the highest rate in the world. Then came President Nayib Bukele. Young, charismatic, and social media savvy, Bukele rose to power on a promise: an all-out war against the gangs. His hardline approach has led to the arrests of over 2% of the country's adult population, many of whom may never see freedom or their families again. While his policies have made El Salvador dramatically safer, they've come at a steep cost. Human rights groups claim that up to 1/3 of those imprisoned are innocent, swept up in mass arrests that prioritize quotas over justice. To understand what this means, meet Juan, a fictional character based on real stories from inside CECOT. Juan is just 15 years old. Abandoned by his impoverished parents, he fell into the clutches of Barrio 18, one of the country's notorious gangs. Now he sits on a transport bus bound for the mega prison, surrounded by other suspected gang members. Arriving at the prison is a dehumanizing experience. A towering 11-meter wall surrounds the complex, fortified to withstand car bombs. Guards armed to the teeth watch every step. Juan is stripped of his belongings, shaved, x-rayed, and given a plain white uniform. His new home is a cramped cell shared with 90 other inmates. His only space is a metal shelf where he sits, eats, and sleeps, with nothing but a towel for a pillow. The lights never turn off. There are no windows, no fresh air, no escape. CECOT's design leaves no room for humanity. There's no outdoor yard for inmates and no gym or cafeteria. Those are reserved for prison staff. Prisoners eat in their cells and shower at shared basins. Solitary confinement, a pitch-black concrete bunker, awaits anyone caught stepping out of line. The sentences handed down here are staggering, from 20 years to over 1,000 years. Some prisoners will die behind these walls, cut off forever from family, friends, and the outside world. Rehabilitation, there are no plans for that. To understand how El Salvador got here, we need to go back. The Maras, including MS-13 and Barrio 18, originated in U.S. cities like Los Angeles. Deported back to Central America in the 1990s, gang members returned to countries ill-prepared to handle their organized crime. Over the decades, gangs ruled neighborhoods with an iron fist, extorting, trafficking, and recruiting children, often leaving them with the impossible choice: join or die. Innocent civilians frequently got caught in the violence. Buses were set on fire with passengers still inside. At its worst, 18 people were murdered every day in a country of just 6 million people. Bukele's war on gangs has been both brutal and effective. In March 2022, a wave of murders, over 60 in a single day, prompted him to declare a state of emergency. Under this decree, basic freedoms were suspended. People could be arrested without a warrant, held for 15 days in pretrial detention, and judged in mass trials involving up to 900 prisoners at once. Overcrowding skyrocketed, and prisons became scenes of abuse, torture, and even deaths. By some reports, over 150 inmates died in custody in just the first year. Their families were often left in the dark, and yet, for many Salvadorans, this is a success story. The murder rate has plummeted from over 6,000 murders in 2015 to just 154 in 2023, making El Salvador one of the safest countries in Latin America. Bukele, immensely popular, was re-elected earlier this year in a landslide victory, but his methods have eroded El Salvador's democracy. The Constitution was altered to allow his re-election. Freedom of the press has been suppressed, and his government's power continues to grow unchecked. Critics argue that Bukele's approach treats the symptoms of violence, but ignores the root causes: poverty, lack of opportunity, and broken communities. As Professor Ashley Batten from Melbourne's Swinburne University explains, If you treat people like trash, you're going to get trash behavior in return. Containment works in the short term, but without rehabilitation or prevention, the violence will eventually return. The reality is stark. Almost 1/3 of El Salvador's prisoners are believed to be innocent, swept up in mass arrests. Poverty-stricken families, unable to afford legal assistance, have been hit hardest by the crackdown. And yet, many Salvadorans feel safer than ever. Bukele himself once joked on Twitter, calling himself the world's coolest dictator. But as El Salvador celebrates its newfound safety, the question remains, at what cost?